Welcome to Thrifting for LARP. LARP can be an expensive hobby, but it doesn't have to be. Today I'm going to share some tips for effectively thrifting what you need to start playing. No one wants to be that person who walks into site for the first time in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Hopefully this guide can help you avoid that. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Maryska. I have been playing, staffing, writing, and running LARPs for almost 30 years now. Primarily, that's fantasy, boffer-style LARPs, and parlor LARPs. I've Currently I'm playing a high fantasy, role-play heavy, light touch game called Numinate in Northern Virginia, which is awesome. But I will be staffing a new LARP, MirrorSight, that starts in April of 2025 in Maryland. I'm a costumer and a cosplayer. I have and do costume for theater, mostly my local community theater. I create costumes for LARP, and I do bespoke pieces for formals and galas and weddings and interesting things like that. I don't like boring commissions. I started out like most people as a young person who had very little money and really wanted to get involved in LARP, but it was expensive. So I did a little bit of sewing early on because I had that skill set, but spoiler, sewing your own costumes isn't always a money saver or a time saver. You have to have the skill, you have to have the equipment, you've got to have a good machine, you've got to have space to cut things out, especially big things like dresses and cloaks. And sometimes you just want to save that extra work in creating something custom for signature pieces or special occasions. And you can fill in a lot of those gaps with thrifting. You can build a really great basic wardrobe from thrifted items and sometimes items you exchange with other players. Actually, even though I do so, a good chunk of my standard wardrobes tend to start out with what I've picked up in Goodwill or the other thrift stores in my area. You can't just walk into a thrift store, though. I mean, you can, and if you get lucky and it's great, you might find some stuff, but you're going to want to set yourself up for success. So I always have a plan. For one thing, if it's a new character, I want to know, well, how many outfits am I trying to build here? You would think with a 3-day weekend LARP, you'd want 3 outfits, but truly you want 4. And the reason for that is that things can tear. You can have a sudden rainstorm and end up with a soaked outfit and you have no way to dry. You could slip in the mud and end up filthy. Having 4 outfits usually just means you're pretty safe as far as having what you need to make it through the weekend. Often I focus on outer layers. And the reason for that is you can get away with wearing a lot of mundane, regular clothing underneath. If you've got cloaks and tabards and coats and things that you can layer on the outside. And also that means you can mix and match more readily. If your underlayer is a long t-shirt and leggings and you're not wearing your garb directly against your skin, it means it doesn't get as sweaty quickly, doesn't get as dirty, so you can, kind of mix and match it over the weekend and wear it a little bit longer without offending your cabin mates. When you are thrifting, you're going to want to take into account the weather. What events do you have coming up? What kind of weather extremes do you expect? Do you need a lot of layers because it might snow in the middle of the night? Is it hot and you need breathable layers? It could be that you might find things that are for another season entirely that are awesome and you want to pick them up, but make sure you're at least prepared for the upcoming games. And treat your character garb as clothing because it is. By that I mean build layers for different situations and weather. Consider both practical accessories, so your belts and your pouches, and also fun ones like signature jewelry, cool hats, maybe things in a unique color palette. You ideally are building a wardrobe for this character because you're going to hopefully be living as them for years to come, depending on how long the LARP lasts. Or at least reusing those pieces if it's a one-off parlor LARP, so you have it for the next game. Speaking of unique color palettes, I have to address this because monochrome black is probably the most popular color among new players, but it's a very tricky thing to pull off in an interesting way. A bunch of black assassin roguey types on the field tend to either disappear, especially at night, or just kind of blend together. Like I don't know which rogue is Josh and which one is Chris. So try for something to have you stand out a little bit. If you want to do the basic black road color, go for a signature pop of color or mix and match fabrics. Because, a brocade black is very different than a silk or linen black, and that can add some layers of interest to your outfit if you're using different things. I actually played as a sorceress who wore all black, breaking my own rules for many years, but what I would do with her is do that fabric mixing. I would add in a little bit of dark jewel tones occasionally as accessories. I blended a lot of textures of fabric, and she had a passion for big hats. So that helped me pull off that black palette, but still be distinctive, and people could tell who I was when they saw me across the field. As far as being distinctive goes, it can help to have kind of a silhouette of what your character typically looks like in your mind when you go shopping. Especially if you're kind of a visual person, does your character prefer tight sleeves? Do they like big skirts or kilts or tight pants or billowy pants? Do they wear scarves or shawls and kind of have those, floating off of them? Do they like hats? Do they like long coats and that power swish from walking in one? Um, this might coincide with your cultural norms or like the way your faction or your LARP dresses, or you might have some quirky differences. But think about some of the recognizable characters in media. Goku with his spiky hair and blousy pants and sleeveless shirt. Laura Croft always had a long high braid and shorts and practical boots. Sephiroth had the long coat and the long hair and the big shoulder pads and that excessive katana. But these characters, what they have in common is that they're all recognizable just by silhouette. So maybe you start with a color scheme, maybe you start with a recognizable silhouette, maybe you just think about the practicality of who your character is, but kind of have an idea of what kinds of things that they would buy and wear when you go. And of course, what is your budget? I chose $100 for this particular project, this particular thrifting adventure, with the intent of getting several complete costumes and garbs with at least one warm item for cool evenings. And I was also going for some accessories as well, especially a belt or a pouch. But have a realistic idea of what you want to spend when you go and stick with it. It can really help you kind of target your shopping experience. For example, if you have a much smaller budget, you're only spending $25 or something. It will give you an idea of what you need to focus on. You've got to have at least a pouch. You are going to probably want to focus on your outer layers and understand that you're going to wear your regular clothes underneath, but you want to cover as much as possible so you can kind of stretch that money. But if you have a realistic budget, you can kind of make a plan as to what you want to prioritize. You can get away with a lot with, an outer layer or two, a decent pouch, and then you wear your own shirts and pants or leggings underneath. Now, when it comes to the LARP or character-specific themes and look, you will find a lot of times you're looking at the LARP's theme. If it's a parlor LARP or something with a very distinctive theme, like 1920s Lovecraftian, that's going to have a very specific look. Victorian steampunk is going to have a specific look. Post-apocalyptic is going to have a specific look. Fantasy is one of the most common ones in the U.S., and it will have, generally a specific look. But it might be that within that theme for your LARP or that time period or that setting, you also have to take into account the culture or the faction or the race or the species or whatever your character is from, and perhaps they have some costuming guides associated with that, a kind of look or guidelines associated with how they would normally dress. So if you do have anything like that available in your rule book or your culture packet, definitely be sure to read that and take some notes before you go. You also might look at what specific things about your character might indicate the types of clothing they'd wear, even within that framework. Are they a noble who maybe would want, brocades and silks and velvets? Are they a miner who might, look for like sturdy leather aprons and, clothing without a whole lot of loose things? What do they do for a living and who are they? And that combined with your cultural guidelines will at least give you a jumping off point. You don't always have to be rigid in that because characters are individuals just like humans. And you're not always going to dress exactly the way everyone else from your background does dress, but it gives you a place to start. And then when you break those rules or do something quirky or different, you're doing it deliberately. And when you do go, don't be too specific. If you walk into a thrift store and you say, I need, brown leather pants, that is what I'm here for, you're probably not going to find it. But if you say, I'm playing a blacksmith, and they would probably wear suede and leather or pleather, even if it's decent quality. They'd wear something sturdy, as a as pants or a tunic or an apron. That's much more general, and you have a good chance of finding something that would fit in with that need for your character. So have a general idea, but don't lock yourself into specific pieces because you're going to be disappointed most of the time anyway. And it's okay to stay general. If your game is high fantasy and you don't really know who your character is going to end up being and how they're going to want to dress, you don't have an idea of their aesthetic, that's you're going to get that in time. It is also okay to just buy things that are generic fantasy and just build a character from that point as a starting point, because you can still use those generic pieces even if you discover later on your character always wears a long purple coat. That is their thing. But it gives you a place to start. And if you, of course, have any images or costume guides or Pinterest boards associated with your LARP and your culture or background in particular, take advantage of that. Reach out to staff if you have questions, or other players in your Discord channel or in your Facebook group or wherever you happen to gather. And finally, when it comes to thinking about your character, consider any makeup requirements that you might need to accommodate. This seems like an obvious thing, but I can't tell you how often I've made this mistake myself. If you're playing a green-skinned goblin or a pink, tiefling, as the case might be, where I made my mistake, you probably want to avoid white sleeves because they're going to get stained. You're going to sweat that paint no matter how good it is and how well you set it's going to come off. If you're playing someone with horns or large ears, take that into account too, because if you're buying headgear or something with a hood or a hat, you want to make sure that not that you can't wear those things, but that you can accommodate those physical characteristics. And actually with horns, it's kind of great. I've seen people with horns and ears just attach them to a hat. So if they're having a lazy Sunday morning and heading off to a field battle and they don't want to, prosade or spirit gum their horns on, they can put the hat on instead, and it just looks like it's coming through a hole in the hat. So you can get creative with those things, but don't bring home something that you don't have a plan for if you have specific makeup requirements. All right, with all of that said and kind of an idea of what we're doing, I am going to go thrifting. I'm hitting a couple of Goodwills, and I know that there are, occasionally other stores that work well, but where I'm at in particular, those are my best options. I've got a couple of big ones. I'm taking a couple of my LARP girlfriends with me, and we're going to see what we can find for $100. So I hit two different stores yesterday, which took a good chunk of the afternoon. I went with a couple of girlfriends who are also LARPers. We hit two different Goodwill locations. Those were our best options. And I will fully admit, and just quick passing, Goodwill is not the most ethical charity out there. And unfortunately, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, but you do the best with what you've got available in your area. And rather than purchasing things through Shein on a budget or ordering from companies in China, I would far rather get used goods here. But that's a whole nother discussion and a whole nother video. Let's talk about what we got. So we actually got really lucky here. I mentioned I had a $100 budget, and I actually got a couple more things that aren't on this rack that were for me personally. I found a skirt that would be great for work, and I got a really neat pumpkin teapot, which I will put somewhere here on the video so you can see it, which could also be a character piece if I chose. But I'm going to go through what's on this rack, talk a little bit about what's here, and then I'm going to pull out a mannequin and assemble a few costumes for you. The first things I acquired, I mentioned earlier that things like scrub pants are really helpful. Well, this is very similar. One of my girlfriends did get scrub pants when we were out, but this is just a plain pair of linen pants that I acquired. So I do look very much for natural fabrics or fabrics that look as natural as possible, even in a fantasy setting. I think all two of these are linen, and one of them looks to be some kind of maybe ghee pants or meditation pants of some point. And these ones I think are going to be fun because they are totally adjustable, which means somebody else can wear them. So if they end up being NPC pants, they've got these wonderful strings to adjust the waist quite a bit. And they're 100% cotton, so I could also dye them. The culture that I had in mind to shop for while I was out to acquire hopefully some pieces for some named NPCs, which, you know, from the staff perspective, you know, that's building a character wardrobe, some very distinctive outfits, but at the very least to get some things that would work for this culture that I could have for just my general unnamed NPCs to wear that would fit. And so I was looking for natural fabrics, I was looking for furs, I was looking for earth tones, I was looking for things like knits and fur type of fabrics, but avoiding very elaborate things like laces and elaborate embroidery, anything that didn't look more than folksy at best. I avoided things like brocades, elaborate weaves. So I think I did a really good job getting what I was looking for. So these pants here, I've got one pair of cotton, two pair of linen. I loved this orange. I thought this was a really fun color. I wouldn't use as much of it, but this would also be great for summer as they are definitely a cropped pair. So I thought those were pretty good. When it came to shirts, and really all of these, you want to try and avoid modern elements like zippers, and snaps are maybe not as bad if they're not super obvious. But again, I'm looking for earth tones. I'm looking for colors that are pretty generic. If I can find lace detailing like this, I will absolutely pick those up. And that is surprisingly common. I think I got two shirts in here maybe that have it, three. One of them was a nice plain white one, which I think will be nice and gender neutral. I don't worry at all about the gender of the clothing or the gender it's intended for a bit, for obvious reasons that it's silly, and also because women's blouses and women's pants, those more femme styles, often are more likely to have interesting embroidery and ties and things of those nature. And they work fine for any gender, non-binary, masc, femme. So if you find what you're looking for in, the wrong section, it doesn't matter. If it works for your character, it works. So I wasn't in love with the blue. I didn't think it was as natural, but it's a Cambria, I think is the fabric on this. But the embroidery and the lacing, I thought, it's worth picking up for just a couple of dollars. And I've got something in brown as well. I like this because some of the frill and smocking and things like that can be a really nice touch, especially on a plain color outfit. And again, this is a nice cotton, or at least cotton feeling enough that it will pass as cotton. Finally, so I got, I think, 5 shirts, which is amazing. 3 pairs of pants, 5 shirts. Again, I said my budget, let me pull this out a little bit more, was $100. And I already have enough that I could do 3 or 4 costumes, no problem. Maybe 5, depending on the weather. I do like to look for some different silhouettes as well. So I found this wonderful, I believe it's a robe. It has almost a little Jedi vibe to it, but this is going to be great to layer over things. So I grabbed that, and it feels almost like almost a silky fabric. I'm sure it's polyester. In fact, I guarantee it's polyester. And ironically from Shein, but it will be incredibly useful as a layering piece. And I figured it wouldn't hurt to pick up a very kind of country-looking dress that, again, has some, not quite lace, but some interesting detailing and also interesting texture in the fabric. I really like interesting textures. This long sweater thing, let me get this to go back on here, is probably not going to actually make it into costuming for this, but I feel like this is a very Goblin Core vibe. So depending on what I layer, and it's got, intentional holes in it, I might use it, I might not, but I think it's kind of fun anyway, so it might end up in my own wardrobe, if not here. And then because I was looking for things like knitting and furs, I found this great little vest that is kind of a faux fur on one side, and then a cable knit on the back. And then I was looking for over layers. So again, it's blue, which was not quite the palette I was looking for, but a great little shawl. And what's great about this is you can wear it as a poncho this way, or you can flip it and have kind of an asymmetrical thing going on, which I tried it on that way in the store and it looked great. So that is a fantastic over piece that if I don't use it for this wardrobe, will get used. And then again, it's kind of wool, loose overcoat. Again, I think this has a little bit of a, I don't know, Aunt Beru Star Wars vibe, but I think it works well for this particular wardrobe, as well as another poncho type over layer, again, knit. And I will throw out here that you can do knitting on a knitting machine, so you can find relatively ethical, cheap knitted items. Crochet cannot be done by machine, so if you find a super cheap crochet item on Temu or Shein or even Amazon, chances are that was made in a sweatshop, so just keep that in mind. Crochet can only be done by hand. And then because I said I was looking for dwarf stuff, I found this little metallic kind of shawl. I have no idea if I'll do anything with it, but it was cheap and I picked it up just in case I ended up using this for another culture. And then of course I've got some accessories. This will probably actually go to another character, another NPC, since it's peacock colors. I've got just a fur scarf, and it's like kind of an infinity scarf type thing, which I feel like could be used for certainly just straight warmth, but maybe even repurposed to make a hat or something with if I want to. Okay, and finally some accessories that I think are pretty good. Put this down. I said belts and pouches are hugely important. I found this very interesting belt. It was a really good fit and has some cool texturing on it. Put that to the side. And then I've got this pouch here, which I really like. Got little compartments in here, surprisingly roomy. And what's cool about it is I can use it with the strap. I could put it over my shoulder and wear it that way, or I can remove the strap from it. Which in this case is attached with a small carabiner, and I can actually pass the belt through this gap in the back, so this could be worn just on my belt. So I think this will work really well. All right, so overview of what I've got. Oh, and I mentioned I got a couple of other things too. I've got this really neat box. Just general LARP use, I think, from the staff side, but it could absolutely be part of a kit for a character. Maybe not something you'd carry into battle, but something you might keep in the tavern or store your crafting supplies in. And those kinds of things are really practical and interesting. I think that covers everything. I'm going to pull out a mannequin and we're going to throw together a few outfits, and I'll just give you an example of some things you can build with this, $100 worth of costuming here that I acquired, and see what we've got. So that's it. I took photos of as many outfits as I felt like putting together, and the truth is I didn't run out of outfits. I just got bored doing it. If you are LARPing and as you build a larger wardrobe, I do encourage you to put your outfits on mannequins or on yourself and take a photo. Having a folder on your Google Drive or your phone where you can reference what goes with what outfit combinations and accessories you like to wear together will make it a lot easier when you show up on site. You've got 45 minutes to game on. You still have to put on your makeup and your clothes and unpack and find your friends. It'll just speed up the process and make it a lot less stressful. I do that with all my characters. When it comes to thrifting, I got a great haul yesterday. I got very lucky, but if you don't find what you're looking for the first time, the inventory is not static. It's changing constantly. Go back the next week. Eventually, you will find the kinds of things you're looking for a character. And as you start putting those outfits together, you're also going to get a feel for what's missing. For example, as I was building all those different outfits, I realized I could really use another belt and definitely another pouch or two. That's where I was noticing I was having issues pairing things together and making it look good. So I think that that would be where I would perhaps splurge a little bit on some new items that were exactly what I wanted, or maybe sew something perhaps that worked. But the foundation of that outfit, that wardrobe rather, is super cheap. I got a lot for just a little bit of money, and I don't think I would have had to buy anything new aside from some more belts and pouches, for the first couple of years at least. I would have been good to go. Beyond that, if you are looking for a LARP in the Maryland area or surrounding on the eastern coast of the U.S., MirrorSight LARP that I will be staffing is opening this year, 2025. Our first event is in April. We would love to see you. It'll be a brand new game, new setting, new players, so you'll be coming in right at the beginning, which is always very exciting. Our website is mirrorsightlarp.com. We're really active on the Discord. I will put the links in the description, and we would love to see you. Wherever you play, whatever type of game, whatever type of character, I wish you happy thrifting and happy adventuring.